How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Credit Report Source. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the 5 factors of your credit, the difference between FICO and Vantage Score, as well as some of the things that lenders are typically looking for when it comes to your borrowing capacity. Obviously, when it comes to building your credit, the most important 5 elements we're going to go through a step at a time on this video are essentially payment history, your utilization, the amount of new credit you have, the age, which is essentially how old your credit is, as well as the diversity of your credit report. You know, what type of items you have in there and what type of credit you've borrowed in the past, which is very, very critical. When it comes to the difference between Vantage and FICO score, Vantage typically is used by alternative lenders, which require only a history of 1 month or so. Kind of like a rating, whereas FICO typically requires a minimum of 6 months to kind of analyze and look at the trended data of your financial performance, as well as a series of other factors to kind of overall determine how good your creditworthiness is and how you're able to borrow. Lenders have typically leaned more towards the FICO scoring model, just simply because it has a lot more data, helps with risk analysis and mitigation in order to lend you money, in order to you as a creditworthy customer to be able to borrow the dollar amount that you're asking for or potentially are able to obtain. And so those are very, very important elements. Now, when it comes to the different 5 elements of your credit score, we'll start with which I believe is the most important one, which is your payment history, right? Even though it's not I would say it's the biggest factor next to your utilization. One of the things you want to kind of keep in mind is you want to have a good 24 months of solid payment history. One of the things you never want to do when it comes to building your credit is do such great work, such hard effort to get to a point where you're like 21 months in or 23 months in, and all of a sudden you have a situation where you're not able to pay on time. That's actually going to hurt you a lot. And so what you want to avoid in this situation is trying to get into a trap where you miss a payment. So whatever you do when you're building your credit, hell or high water, the most important thing I would concentrate on is the payment history. Just simply keep a good payment history. Now, of course, there's the 4 other factors, but that's the biggest one. So don't mess or screw with that, because you will need it. And it's one of the things that we cannot go back on. And so try to keep that as strong and as intentional as possible not to screw up the payment history. The other part is what we call the utilization, which is the second component of your credit score model or the FICO model. It's utilization. It's how much of the credit compared to the available you've used. What percentage of the available credit you have available is what we call utilization. Typically, a lot of FICO score banks and lenders, the model itself recommends you keep it below 30%, meaning if you have $100,000, you want to keep below $30,000. The reality is the ideal model, the ideal way to keep your scores really good is below 10%, below 8 to 10%. And the reason I say that is because that demonstrates capacity. That demonstrates your ability to keep a financial structure that is quite responsible, that is good for borrowing in the future, that is good to give you additional credit that you can handle with responsibility. And so capacity is very important. So if you can keep that utilization below 10 to 8% and not stick to the traditional 30%, even though that is a recommended structure and you can borrow more with that, I would encourage you to keep it below 10 to 8%. And that's what I would say is a huge component to becoming successful when it comes to leveraging or building your credit. The other element is new credit, right? How much of applications are you doing every single year? And that also affects the amount of inquiries, which are hard inquiries against your credit score. Every time you apply for funding, there's an inquiry. They ask for your credit score, they take your information, and they create a little dent, which is called an inquiry. You want to minimize that. So the amount of credit you borrow and what you're approved for also has a huge factor towards your FICO score or your credit score. You want to typically minimize the amount of inquiries. You want to keep it less than 3 per year. And if you're getting new accounts, try to diversify them, like installment loans, car payment, or mortgages, even revolving credit, which is credit cards or lines of credit. So you want to diversify, which is huge, right? It's the other factor, which is the 4th factor. So not only is new credit important, but what type of new credit are you obtaining, right? So minimize the amount of inquiries by not obtaining more than 3 new accounts a year, especially if you're starting out, right? And if you're really in need to use credit and stuff like that, there are strategies we can discuss. And by the way, I'm going to do a little quick stop here. If you're really interested in upgrading and leveling up your credit, I have created a free community in school under the Credit Report Source banner. So go ahead and check that. It's in the description. So continuing on to our conversation. So new credit, the amount of inquiries you can minimize, as well as the type of credit you get approved for, has a huge impact on your credit score and your factor. So be careful with that, right? So check that out as well. And then finally, what you want to also do is the diversity of your credit, right? It's the category of what you're getting approved for, what type of accounts, how big are those accounts? Are they institutionally recognized? Are they brand new businesses, etc.? All of those factors do play in. So your FICO FICO score, right, as we categorize based on priority, your payment history is number one. Your utilization is probably the number two thing I would look at to try to keep it below 10 to 8% as the recommended strategy that I just discussed with you earlier. And then ultimately, the rest about new credit history, how long you've had it for, the type of accounts you're getting, all of those other factors do play in, right? So if you focus on the first one, which is payment history, and then utilization, and minimizing the amount of inquiries you get and the type of accounts you get approved for, will help you significantly keep an eye out and start strategically building your credit to where you can actually typically leverage that for a lot of different things. I know a good couple of friends of mine that use credit to literally invest, and they don't give it more than 21 to 30 days to leverage that credit until they get paid within that time frame to reimburse the entire amount. And so they actually have a really good unit of investment structures that they leverage using credit that allows them to do so many creative deals. And so if you're leveraging credit, if you're trying to build your credit, I would encourage you guys to try to look into the aspect of doing it so that you know for a fact you have the capability to pay it down all the way should you have used it. And of course, keep building your credit, keep improving your score, keep learning new things. As always, this is Ali Tarafter from Credit Pro Source. I thank you guys for listening. And again, don't forget to join the free community. The link is in the description, and I look forward to catching you guys on the next one. Bye for now.